Dodging and burning on the face is a very, very, very popular retouching technique. And it's one of those things that you might think, well, maybe it's not that necessary. But I think when you see the results, it really makes a nice difference. This is a finishing move. So this is kind of after you've removed blemishes and you've done other things and you're getting kind of towards the end. I usually do this as one of the last things that I'll do. And it has the effect of sculpting the face. It enhances the highlights, it enhances the shadows, makes the face kind of look thinner, and it brings out detail. So it has a lot of nice things to it. It really adds a very, very nice finishing effect. You're not going to do this to every photo, but for the ones that you really want to make special, this would be the thing that I add at the end. Now, I use a much different technique than I do that I'm going to show you today than I've used in the past, and it's even in my book on professional portrait retouching techniques for photographers. I learned this one out on the road during my Light It, Shoot It, Retouch It tour. One of the attendees that was a full-time retoucher showed it to me, and I've been using this ever since, and I really, really like it. So it makes use of curves. Even if you've never used curves before, you'll still be able to do this because it's just kind of a setup, and then you're set. So let's go ahead and go through this, and I'll give you an idea how it works. Step one is we're going to add 2 curves adjustment layers. So go over here to the curves, or you can actually choose it from right here, from the little pop-up menu, choose curves. And you're going to build 2 things. First is you're going to make this really, really bright. Click in the middle and go over here till it's like solid white, kind of blown out. That's one. That's going to be your highlights, and then you hide it. Go back to the background layer. You're going to do the same exact thing again. Go to curves. But this time you're going to click and you're going to drag way down here till it's almost black, like that. So you've got one that's really, really dark and one that's really, really white, and you're going to hide that. Now, while you're here, you might as well just go ahead and press Command-I to hide that behind a mask. Go to the other one, press Command-I to hide that behind a mask. So they're both hidden, and we'll work on the brighter one first. And if you ever forget which one's the brighter or darker one, when you click on it, you could look at the curve and say, oh yeah, that's the brighter one. So you don't necessarily have to name it. Now you're going to work with a very small edged brush. So we're going to get the brush tool, and I generally work with like a 9 or 12 pixel hard edged brush. Now, by the way, if you're looking at my brushes again and you're wondering your brushes look different than my brushes look different than the default brushes, I use the basic brushes. I like these brushes. These are the ones that have been in Photoshop forever. I'm old school, so I'm using those instead of the assorted brushes, which are the new default. So I load the basic brushes. All right, we're going to choose the 9 pixel hard edged brush, and you can see the lower, softer ones are over here. All right, so here's what we're going to do. This is going to sound a little crazy when I tell you this. You're going to draw white lines over all of the highlight areas in the photo. By highlight areas, I mean things that actually extend out from the face. So if the face were flat, what extends out? Well, your nose, your cheeks would extend out a little bit, tip of your chin. You'll see the areas here. So you're going to draw a white line. So, whoops, let's make it a little straighter. A white line there. So I'm just holding the Shift key there to make that straight line. I click once, hold Shift, draw a straight line. And then you're going to draw other areas that have highlights that extend out. So a little here, a little there. It's this side of the lips. You can see a highlight there. The chin has a highlight. There's a highlight that we created over here using actually a light. And there's a highlight here. So I'm just looking at her face and choosing the highlight areas. And you can see highlights on her leather jacket and stuff, but we're not going to accentuate those. And there's a little highlight there. And maybe right above her eyebrows, there's a highlight. Those are pretty much where there's one kind of here. Those are pretty much where the highlights are. Now you're going to go over here and click on the little masks button. So here's the curves, and there's the mask button. You're going to go over here. Now if you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, like Photoshop CS5, there actually is a masks panel you can bring up. But in this case, they just put it right here. See this thing called a feather? You're just going to drag this to the right. Watch the image while I drag to the right. It's going to soften those highlights and make them look really pretty. There we go. So I'm up at 30 pixels, and here I'm going to turn it on and turn it off. So you see how it's like bringing all the highlights out a little bit, softening them? All right, maybe a little higher with that. Maybe, we're at 33 pixels, so something like that's not bad. Then we're going to go to the shadows, and we're going to do the same thing. I made the shadows, change to the shadow channel. You're still going to paint in white, but now you're going to paint over the areas that recede. So the first one I always do is I go right across the top of the forehead, just trace right along the top of the forehead, right there. Then you're going to go on the sides of the nose. Then you're going to go under the chin. You're going to do kind of the cheekbones over here. And I went right across the highlight there, didn't I? Let's go back a little this way, a little further for the cheekbones over there. I'm sorry. Cheekbone, cheekbone. And then any shadow areas that you want to enhance there, there's a little right there and there. And you could go, I don't really generally do the eyes too much, but you could go under there. I think that'll probably cover us for the shadows. Then you're going to click on the masks button. Again, if you're using an earlier version of Photoshop, go up and choose the masks panel, or there's a button up here that will take you to the masks panel. If you're using a selection tool, and drag the feather way over to the right, it starts to pop up and soften. Take a look at the difference. There, it's accentuating the shadows. Let's go up a little higher with that, maybe to 40. Now, what I found out about this technique is generally the shadows are too dark. So now you're going to come in here and just lower the shadows. And depending on the photo, you may have to lower the highlights as well. But look how it sculpts the face. Here's before, and there's after. It just kind of helps to sculpt the face, just like that. Now, so that's a lot of setup, creating all these curves and stuff. So what I recommend doing, instead of doing this, is do this. Before you build your curves, go to the Actions palette. The Actions panel, it's actually a panel. The Actions panel is a tape recorder that lives inside of Photoshop. So what you can do is this. If you're going to be using this dodge and burn method, go to create a new action. We'll call this, take the pen out of my mouth, set up, dodge, and burn. All right, set up, dodge, and burn. And you can assign it to a function key on your keyboard if you like. If you want it to be like F5 or something, you can just, when you press F5, it will run this action. You click record. You notice it doesn't say OK. It says record. Now it's recording your steps. So what was step one from this technique? Step one was choose a curve. And it was to grab the middle and make it really, really bright. Then we need to invert that mask, image, adjustments, invert. All right, that's the brighter one. Then you're going to go create another curve. You're going to grab the center and drag down to make it really, really dark. And you're going to invert it as well, or just press Command I. Now, we start off by working on the highlight one, so hide the darker one, click on the lighter one, get the brush tool, make sure you've chosen a 9-pixel brush, and now you're ready to start your retouching. But you want to go now to the Actions panel. It's been recording every one of your steps. Notice the little red record button. Look, it's got your adjustment layers, your inversions, all this different stuff, changing your brush to a hard 9-pixel brush. You click stop. All right, so now you've stopped the recording, so we can start over. Let's test our action and make sure it works. Just go to the Actions panel, click on Set Up, Dodge, and Burn, and then hit the play button. And look, in a split second, there's all your curves. It's all ready to go. It even chose the right brush, foreground color set to white, and you have a 9-pixel brush. You're ready to begin your retouching. Now, in the future, you won't have to even go to the Actions palette. The Actions palette is really where we go just to build them. In the future, you'll just press F5 on your keyboard and look, it's done. You're ready to start. So that actually lets you automate the process a little bit. Now, this dodging and burning on certain images will be unbelievably stunning. You can't believe the effect it will have, and you'll go crazy. And you'll do other images where it's much less subtle, and you're like, wow, I'm not sure if it really was worth doing. That's why you want to set up the action. So you spend just a tiny bit of time doing it, and you'll know right away, because it is one of those things where it either does an incredibly stunning, wild, you fall over job, or you're like, when it's done. But if you write that action, it really won't matter, because you won't spend more than 60 seconds on any of it.